If there was an all-star game for lying about Colorado's voting laws, some folks made that roster today. Baseball's Star Showcase gives us the chance to clear up claims about how we vote versus Georgia. Another COVID variant turns up in Colorado, confirms what we've been seeing in the numbers. CU's Poop Patrol, put in place for the pandemic, is now sniffing out some other issues on campus. And prepare to look at the post office in a new way, considering its role in bringing the original transplants to Colorado. Next. The hottest players in baseball and the worst takes in politics. Colorado is getting both of them. All-Star Game moved out of Atlanta because of Georgia's new restrictive voting laws coming to Denver, in this state that aims to make it easier, not harder, for people to vote. Immediately, all these national figures started claiming that Colorado limits voting just like Georgia. We both know that's nonsense, and politics guy Marshall Zellinger can explain exactly why.
Check out the stats. 94% of voters in Colorado turned in a mail ballot last November. 74% voted in person in Georgia. In Colorado, mail ballots are sent to every active registered voter. In Georgia, mail ballots are by request only. And with some exceptions, you have to do it every election. Voter drop boxes. Remember this interactive map we provided you with every drop box in Colorado? There were 397 drop boxes last election, almost 100 more than legally required. How many your county has depends on how many voters there are. In densely populated counties, it's one for every 12,500 voters. In smaller counties, one for every 15,000 voters. Drop boxes are open 24 hours a day, starting 15 days prior to the election, and you can drop your ballot off in any of the state's drop boxes. In Georgia, the new requirement is one drop box for every 100,000 voters. The new law places drop boxes inside early voting sites, so they're not open 24 hours a day, only when early voting is happening, which ends the Friday before Election Day. In Colorado, you can register to vote up to and on Election Day. In Georgia, you have to register 29 days before the election. Voter ID, yes, it's needed in both states. In Colorado, you need it at least in the beginning, when you register for the first time, and if you choose to vote in person. You also need it the first time you vote by mail if you haven't previously voted in Colorado or previously provided ID. Colorado gives 16 ways to provide ID, not just a driver's license. In Georgia, there are 6 ways to provide ID, which is also needed to vote in person. If you vote by mail, you need to provide your driver's license or ID number, or last 4 digits of your social. Some similarities? Both states use ballot tracks to monitor your ballot status online, except Denver, which uses ballot trace. And except for 2 counties in Colorado, both states use Dominion voting machines. There's been a lot of attention on the idea of not being able to hand someone food or water in line, and that's true in Georgia. You can't do that within 25 feet of any voter waiting in line. In Colorado, you cannot electioneer within 100 feet of a polling place. So if you're wearing a candidate's shirt or a button, you wouldn't be able to hand out food or water there, at least within the 100 feet. But Colorado also doesn't have the problem of long lines where food or water in line might be necessary, Kyle.
That's what I'm shouting through the TV. We don't stand in line for hours because we don't make people go through that hurdle to vote. That's kind of at the essence of the difference, mail-in voting versus waiting in line for hours.
And there's another aspect that I really didn't get into in the story. It's about the rules and regulations of voting. That, lawmakers make the laws for how elections work, and then it's up to, in Colorado, the Secretary of State's office to implement rules. And Georgia changed that as well, taking that power away from the Secretary of State's office and instead giving it to the Republican state legislature.
All right, Marshall Zellinger with a heaping helping of truth tonight. Appreciate that. So, every time that Colorado's voting system gets smeared and misrepresented for political gain, and it's happened a bit lately, it's just kind of perplexing to me, because the way we vote here is a bipartisan success story built and run by Republicans and Democrats alike, from Denver out to the rural counties. Republicans and Democrats should have great pride in what they have created and preserved here in our voting system. Now, Democrats are happy to claim their share of the credit, and then some, but national Republicans and some of the most conservative in our own state legislature seem intent on casting doubt on this system that Republicans helped build and run. So it puts the rest of Colorado's Republicans, whether you're elected or just a voter, in this tough spot of either standing up to criticism and misrepresentation from your own side, or, through your silence, giving away the credit you deserve for making Colorado a state where voting is secure and accessible. Take a look at the state of the pandemic in our state. 19.5% of Coloradans have now completed the vaccination process. Just under 750,000 people are waiting on their second shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. Look at that. You add that gray slice, which is the 20% of our population too young to get the shot, and we are really taking a bite of the pie. In the race between the vaccines and the variants have a new runner on the course. 2 cases of the P1 variant have now been identified in Boulder County. That variant was originally detected in Brazil. The state and the county are investigating possible exposures to this variant in Boulder County, and they're doing contact tracing. This was certainly not unexpected. Knew that the variants would eventually be found here. This is just yet another. Does emphasize, though, how important it is to get as many people vaccinated as possible before those variants become even more prevalent. Then you got hospitalizations there. 374 Coloradans currently in the hospital with COVID-19. That is up 23 patients from the day before. And even when you smooth things out into a weekly trend line, it's clear it's a sustained increase, up 51 patients from this time last week. Our positivity rate yesterday was over 7%. Not good. Our 7-day average for positivity has been steadily climbing, now at 5.6%. We are now clearly above the 5% threshold. That's what public health experts point to, say, if you stay under that, you're considered as having the virus under control. In one of the least desirable parts of Boulder, there is some very important research going on to keep college students safe. We told you last summer about how CU was planning to test wastewater, for signs of COVID. Well, now this work could extend beyond the pandemic. Our Mark Salinger was insistent that I tell you that he is flushing out the details.
On a campus known for its beauty,
and it just sits in the stream that's flowing past.
today we focus on one of the least beautiful things in Boulder.
And it's just a continuous flow that's coming up, pumping through the manhole itself.
Our story takes us underground,
Exactly.
with the man in charge of catching signs of COVID in our waste.
So my name is Creston Mansfield.
Creston is an assistant professor at CU. Since last September, he's been leading a team using black boxes all around campus to test wastewater.
Specifically, it was really designed for the SARS-CoV-2 epidemic, but it has actually a pretty wide range of information that it's able to detect.
Nearly 9 months and 5,000 tests later, the wastewater monitoring system can be credited with helping keep students on campus healthy by working to discover COVID outbreaks before they spread. If the system detects an increased level of the virus in waste, increased testing can be done in specific dorms to isolate the sick before they infect others.
I think it's where necessity really drove innovation.
Recently, the system has detected low levels of the virus in wastewater, mirroring the ups and downs of spikes in Colorado. Now, it'll be used beyond the pandemic.
So initially, it was really targeting the SARS-CoV-2, but we have expanded to start looking at influenza and norovirus and other types of pathogenic information that's moving through the system.
Creston's system can detect the flu and other viruses that make us sick. So every time we flush, the black boxes on campus help keep others healthy. How beautiful is that?
And this system can all go well beyond college campuses. It's relatively easy to set up, so cities, for example, could use it to monitor which communities might be having virus outbreaks, and from there, Kyle, health departments can use testing in more targeted ways.
And you talk about some of those other tools, Mark, without ruining anybody's supper time. They're not able to trace individual samples back to individual people, so they need those other tools.
Yeah, it's one tool in the toolbox. CU also uses regular saliva testing as well as contact tracing, and from there they can help determine who's sick and get them isolated or in quarantine.
All right. Mark Salinger reporting for the first time from the Salinger Skyline domicile. Mark, thank you. Denver Public Schools Board of Education is starting a third-party investigation into anonymous secondhand allegations of sexual assault and sexual harassment against Board Director Tay Anderson. Anderson was accused by his former allies in the community organization Black Lives Matter 5280. They said that a woman who wants to remain anonymous and who does not want to go to police came to them to say that Anderson sexually assaulted her. Anderson's denied that, but he's asked for more details on what exactly he is being accused of. Then some other former colleagues anonymously wrote a letter accusing Anderson of sexual harassment years ago. DPS said today that it's going to bring in an outside group to investigate these claims. Anderson said that he is grateful for DPS taking that step, and he's looking forward to a transparent process. She was killed for no reason by someone using a stolen gun. Colorado will soon have a new law named in her memory. Our memory of how Colorado was settled probably does not focus on the post office. Perhaps it should.
So the federal government during this time period, the kind of late 1800s, is really trying to encourage white settlers to occupy the West for all sorts of different reasons.
It's what a local professor calls paper trail. We're on it next. The Democrats who control the state legislature are abandoning their bill to try and change school discipline. It was clear it was losing support among some Democrats because they don't need Republicans to pass it. Senator Janet Buckner and Representative Leslie Herod said today there is no path forward for their bill, which would have blocked police officers from getting involved in school discipline for things like smoking or drinking and anything up to misdemeanors that didn't involve serious bodily injury or the threat of it. They said that it was to keep kids from getting stuck in the criminal justice system early in life. Critics said it would have let high school kids basically just run wild, do whatever they want, with only in-school consequences for their behavior. Opponents in the state legislature were not able to stop a bill from Democrats to require gun owners report when their weapons are stolen. The bill that just got passed out of the legislature, headed for the governor, is named for Isabella Thalis, who was shot and killed while walking her dog near Coors Field last summer. Denver police say the gun used in that shooting was stolen from a DPD officer. The man suspected in the shooting has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The officer has said the gun was taken without his knowledge or permission. This bill that just passed out of the state legislature, named in Thalis's memory, gives a gun owner 5 days to report when their gun is lost or stolen. The punishment the legislature created for this isn't much. It's a $25 fine the first time, up to $500 if it happens again.
Several days with record highs in the 70s and 80s, and today it all changes with the arrival of a storm this morning. A storm bringing mountain snow, foothill snow, rain to Denver, and thunder, even some graupo, those small, squishy, soft little kind of hail pellets. That's all happening across the metro area over the next 2 hours. Then this whole line of storms is going to push off to the east. We've got snow in the mountains, but no advisories for travel. We are, however, monitoring the wind, very gusty out of the north. Tomorrow it'll be gusty out of the northwest on the backside of the storm as it moves out. Best chance for rain and snow will be over the next 2 hours or so, and then the storm system is basically out of here. So we've got rain, snow, and thunder, then some clearing late, our low 33. Tomorrow, sunshine and 60s. Temperatures up and down heading into the weekend with our next chance for showers on Monday of next week.
So, you know, meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen is all over severe weather like flies on pie. He went out hail chasing today, so we were ready to excuse him from his regular poetry appearance here. But yet he wanted to get pelted with hail while reciting a haiku. He had to settle for rain and snow.
Corey Reppenhagen is on the weather beat.
Pea-sized hail for some, even some thunder grapple. It's snow and rain for me.
That was Corey Reppenhagen on the weather beat.
The history of Colorado's oldest post offices is American history, for good and for bad.
Postal system was really, you can think about it as being kind of the front lines of colonization and occupation.
A CU Denver professor mapping how the U.S. Post Office led the way west, helping to displace Native people. Next. Post offices, where they were placed throughout American history and how the places around them changed. That topic fascinates a professor at CU Denver. He's written a book about the westward expansion of America's 166,000 post office locations, including through Colorado, and how native lands were taken at the same time.
So my name's Cameron Blevins. I'm a professor at CU Denver. So the federal government during this time period, the kind of late 1800s, is really trying to encourage white settlers to occupy the West for all sorts of different reasons. But at that time, much of Colorado was still occupied by Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute people. Prospectors start illegally trespassing on Ute land in the San Juan Mountains in southwestern Colorado, and post offices follow them. Within 3 years, there's 20 post offices up and running in this really, really remote, mountainous corner of Colorado. The postal system was really, you can think about it as being kind of the front lines of colonization and occupation. It's not the cause, right? The U.S. postal system didn't cause their land to be stolen, but it did accelerate that process of colonization through a series of, warfare, treaty, executive orders. That land is taken and stolen. Native people start using the post itself as a way to push back. They'll start writing letters to other reservations to try to track down family members that might have gotten separated by this kind of wrenching process of being forced onto reservations. So they're taking this tool of the federal government that in some ways has accelerated their dispossession, and they're turning it around and really using it to stay connected to each other and also try to improve their situation. So I think it's really important to try to understand some of those bigger, more hidden kind of systems and infrastructures that really do shape our world, and oftentimes we just don't really think about it.
Appreciate Cameron sharing his work through the lens of our photojournalist Foster Gaines. His book, Paper Trails, just came out. You can find it in the places where you find books. When the world gives you potholes, make a forest. It's the most Colorado thing we saw today, and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a lone tree in Castle Rock, bravely standing amid a concrete jungle. Bethany spotted the pothole ornament over the weekend. Bethany called it a happy little tree like the painter guy. I have a feeling that this is actually a very good way to get attention on a pothole and get it fixed. If you see something around town that just says Colorado to you, send it our way so we can share it with the class. Next at 9news.com is the email. I read every one. Or use the hashtag #HeyNext. Oh, feedback tonight about our comparison of the voting laws in Colorado versus Georgia. Yvonne says, thank you, Kyle, for discussing Colorado voting laws versus Georgia. Was enlightening and excellent. No need to thank me, Yvonne. Thank Marshall Zellinger. He is the politics expert, and he's the one who spent his day on it. Ryan, less appreciative, writes, keep your political views to yourself. Just report the news, clown. You have to do it. You have to do the clown thing in the Happy Gilmore voice. I've reached out to Ryan to see if there was a specific factual error, and if you follow our feedback segment, this is where it turns into crickets. See you next time.